And I'm a retired principal with the Durham District School Board, and I'm one of the co-leads for this digital relationships project that you'll be experiencing today. Welcome and thank you for joining us. We're thrilled to have you here this morning, and we know there are many others who are probably going to be joining us as time allows. And we appreciate you carving out some time in your busy worlds. Before we begin this morning, though, just some housekeeping items. We're in a meeting format this morning, which is a little more relaxed. So we'll ask everyone to just ensure that you take a look at our screen that's up right now. We will be recording today's sessions. You'll have an opportunity to come back to it from our website if need be. Likewise, because we're in a meeting format on Zoom this morning, you do have the ability to turn your cameras on and your microphones if you have any questions or comments. As we have a large number that have registered this morning, what we suggest is if you have any questions or comments, please feel free to use the chat. We're monitoring it and we'll be sure to respond. And if we can't respond right away, we'll certainly ensure that any comments and feedback you have are incorporated into the post materials that we send back out again today. Remember that because we're recording, your cameras are on, be aware of your background. And I know you're all in busy schools, and just be aware of your microphone and cameras today. If you have an opportunity, lastly, we sure would love you to share what you learned today, but also about some of our future opportunities through social media. So please, if you are a regular user of a social media channel, let folks know that you attended today through CPCO or OPC, and that you're maybe excited to come back to one of our future sessions that will be happening throughout the school year. We are glad to have you here today. This morning's presentation is a collaboration between a number of organizations, the Catholic Principals Council of Ontario, our good friends at ADFO, the Ontario Principals Council, and Victim Services Ontario. The project itself is funded through the Ministry of Education. We're thrilled today to have two guests who are going to be joining us to bring some of their experiences as well. So we're welcoming today Kim Sadnick, who is Vice Principal at Malvern Collegiate in Toronto, and as well Jasminder Seacombe, who joins us from Victim Services Toronto. So we're welcoming them, and you'll be hearing more from them as the presentation continues today. And I will be co-leading today with Jan Murphy, and Jan will introduce herself as the presentation continues. The goals for this morning are first to share some resources that are already existing on both the CPCO and the OPC websites around cyberbullying and cyber violence. You may be aware of them, you may not have dug deep into them, but we'll take a little bit of time today to explore those resources. We'll look at about 6 documents today and also navigate to those documents so you'll be able to find them in the future should you like to explore further. We'd also like to take some time to increase awareness of cyber violence and cyberbullying supports and responses. So you will be looking very specifically at a proactive response document and a reactive response document today. Lastly, and probably most importantly, we'll be gathering some feedback from you. We're really thrilled to have folks online with us today from across the province, and we'll be looking for your feedback because we're updating some of our documents this year. And so throughout our sessions this year, we'll be asking for feedback from you on how you would improve some of the documentation that we have so that we can incorporate that into the resources that are already existing for principals and vice principals across the province. So that's coming up later in the presentation. Also coming up at the end of the presentation will be a bit of a summary and teaser for upcoming workshops that are happening through OPC and CPCO. I've got the titles here. I'm not even going to go into details about the upcoming workshops because I know Jan's going to talk more about them at the end of our workshop this morning, our webinar this morning. But we do have, as you can see, seminars prepared throughout the school year that I think you'll find very interesting on a variety of different lenses approaching cyber violence and cyberbullying. The documents we're going to be looking at today are going to be found on both the CPCO and the OPC websites. The documents largely are the same, although those documents from CPCO do have information on them that has a faith component that the Ontario Principals Council documents don't have. I've got two right now QR codes up on my screen, hoping you do as well. And those QR codes will take you directly to the websites that have those documents. Feel free to click those with your camera now. We're going to navigate to them, and you'll be able to find them yourselves on the web. But we thought we'd throw those QR codes up, and we'll have another couple of QR codes coming up later in the presentation. So if you haven't got your camera ready and you want to grab it, that's something that might help you later. Just grab some websites as we move along today. We're going to be looking at, as I said, 6 documents. I'll be taking you to 2 documents on the OPC website in the cyberviolence and cyberbullying section. One of them is entitled Parent and School Engagement, and the other is Restorative Practice. And we'll take a little bit of time to go through those. We'll navigate to them, then we'll go through them and take a closer look at them. And then Jan is going to take us to the CPCO website, where we're going to take a look at a fantastic document called Helping Students Help Students, and as well a document called Listening to What Students Have to Say. Those 2 documents, those 4 documents are only foundational, and there are many other documents that we'll point to today as we look at our websites. So with that in mind, I'm going to take a moment now to stop sharing, and we're going to go over to navigate to the web. So bear with me as I stop for a moment. We'll take a look. Right now you're looking, or maybe not just yet. All right, here it comes. Right now we're looking at the Ontario Principals Council website, and this is the landing page. So if you were to go to principals.ca, you'd land on the front page of the Principals website. And if you were looking for the cyberviolence and cyberbullying resources, you'd click on professional learning. So I'm going to move over to professional learning, and we're going to select ministry funded resources. Scrolling down, you'll see there are a number of projects on this website in different resource areas. Today, we're looking at the Healthy Relationships in a Digital World website, or web page. So I'm going to click on that, and that will take us to the resources that exist from our site, OPC. I'm the OPC representative. You'll see that they're mirrored again on the other site. Scrolling down, first section, first of all, is a summary of the webinars that we are going to be holding on this topic this year. So if you haven't been to this section, please visit it. You may want to sign up for the next 3. Do that now, and we'd love to see you. There's some very interesting guests and topics coming up. Again, we'll do the teasers at the end, but this is where you can sign up for those and get a reminder and get your links and all those things. So that's the top section. At the bottom section is the resource panel. And this is where you'll find all the documents related to cyberbullying, cyberviolence as well. We're going to take a moment now to go to the parent section, which is about, there we go, about a third down. And the parent resource section today, we're going to look at what's called the Parent School Engagement Guide, or Parent Engagement Guide, it says here. So we'll just open it up. And this is an example of a document you might find on the website. What I love about these documents as a school principal, they are ready to be printed and ready to be given out. So they are excellent on-the-ground resources for you to share both with parents and with staff. This is a very parent-friendly resource, and I selected it to show you today because I think it really both relates very nicely to the elementary experience and to the secondary experience as well, and is a handy document to have out. If I was in my school right now, I'd have it out in the office for parents, and I'd have it probably ready at a department head meeting, and also be distributing it to my my junior and intermediate staff for sure, and maybe my primary staff, depending on the school that I was in. The document itself summarizes definitions for cyberviolence and cyberbullying, gives parents and your staff and your team some basic facts on what we know about cyberbullying and cyberviolence in Ontario. And really stark statistics here. It is a problem we need to grapple with as school leaders. 51% of all teens have had negative experiences with social networking thus far. A great do you know section for parents to have that quiet pondering moment as they read through this section. Have you noticed your child is having trouble sleeping, less interested in school and hobbies? So some great prompts for parents to ponder. And then the second page, the flip side, if you were to photocopy it, is an ask yourself question. So I won't read these to you, but you can see questions like, who is my child online with? Great questions to talk to your child about. This is a document I absolutely would use at an SCC meeting to spark discussion around online conduct with students. A little further down, the why question. Why is my child online? So what are they doing? Where is my child online? Probably one of the most important questions. Are they in a bedroom with the door closed, or are they comfortably in the living room where you can see and they can see what they're doing? Great questions for parents. Great questions to prompt teachers to talk to parents about as well when they're meeting with students. And some conversation starters here. Gentle Reminders is a great section, and it's really a section that suggests strategies to parents that they may not have considered when talking about the awkwardness of the online or second life experience, as we sometimes call it. Your board's going to have its own policies, and like every school board, probably its own acronyms. But I am a favorite of Learn the 3 Cs. So I do like content, contact, and conduct. You may have your own acronym for response and proactively looking at cyberviolence and cyberbullying. But content is great. It talks about what are they doing online. Contact. Do you know who to call and what to do if things go badly? And lastly, conduct. Discussing limits with your kids online. So a fantastic document that's available for you to photocopy and have available at any time for staff and students. So that's the first document I wanted to show you today. I'm going to go back to the website now and close up my parent resource section. And that one is a good one if you were working with parents and teachers. But I'm going to scroll back up to the top because we're going to look at the restorative practice section. And this is a fantastic document that I think actually would go a long way, not only working with parents, it's actually a really great parent document, but also working with staff teams, leadership teams within your school. So the restorative practice document is a great document for you to use when discussing how we respond to incidents that may occur, but really importantly as well, how we proactively prepare for a response. And that's a really important message when you're working with your department heads or you're working with your chair people in your elementary panel. So restorative practice gives a nice definition of what it is. I think many of us have probably had experience in restorative practice in our schools, but not all. And we certainly have a lot of new vice principals entering the system right now. Welcome if you're one of those. We're thrilled to have you as part of the leadership teams across Ontario. But some of us don't have as much experience with restorative practice. This is a great document, not only to refresh your knowledge, but to bring to your leadership team in the school and say, how are we prepping ourselves to move towards a restorative response when it's necessary? A little bit at the bottom here around the benefits of a restorative response. Page 2, the flip side. A section on mindset. So just the practice of mindset, the fact that this is a move necessarily, I think, towards a fundamental approach to the victim and also to the perpetrator or the person who is victimizing others. What's the goal of restorative practices? An important question that often parents ask: whose voice is heard and whose is not heard? And some great questions for the leaders in your school, for you as a principal, and also for your vice principals out there as well. Are the wrongs being acknowledged? Are the needs of those who were harmed being addressed? So some great questions for you to ponder as you use restorative practice to just to move your climate in your school to one that it's supportive and one that's positive and safe. So this is a great document that could be used in a number of ways in your school. And as I said earlier, a document that's ready right now to be photocopied and good for you to use. Those two documents were on the Ontario Principals Council website. We're going to jump out of the screen right now and we're going to move to a couple of documents that also are on the OPC website, but we're going to navigate over to CPCO, and Jan's going to walk us through some documents on that website and how you can navigate.
Thanks, Tim. So I'm going to switch and do a screen share to the OPC site, and shortly you'll be seeing the the CPCO site from the OPC site, the CPCO landing page, and we're set up slightly differently, but we do have the, as mentioned, similar content. So on the CPCO landing page, if you go to the blue banner and you scroll across to Catholic Leadership and scroll down to a tab that says Leading Mental Health, Healthy Relationships, and Human Trafficking Awareness, the second tab is the Healthy Relationships, Cyberviolence, and Cyberbullying section. So our website landing page is set up slightly differently in that we have all the same resources, but they're collated in a different format. We have resources for principals and vice principals on the left-hand side, and you'll see all of the resources are in either PDF or Excel or a hyperlink format. We have our Institute for Catholic Education resources that link to digital citizenry. As well, we have a section called Resources for Principals, Vice Principals to use with parents, guardians, and students. And that's where the parent engagement guide that Tim referenced earlier would be found on our website. We do have a one resource from the Ministry of Education, and then another parent tip sheet that is both in 20 languages, both on the OPC website as well as CPCO. So I'm going to navigate us to two resources that are student-driven. An interesting part of the cyberviolence and cyberbullying initiative is that we have had student voice involved right from the very beginning. We've asked students, what do they think principals and vice principals in schools today need to know about cyberviolence and cyberbullying? Our last involvement with the students was about 2 years ago, and we pulled a group from across the province and said, what are some really key things that are happening now with AI, with deep fakes, with all of the bullying that's happening in the digital world or cyber violence? What do we need to know? How can we help you? We had some guiding questions for them. What do you do if something has happened to you? So we pulled this focus group together of students and got some great information, and we put it together in two resources. The first one I'm sharing is called Helping Students Help Students. This is a principal's guide to helping students help students. Well, why would we have this, you ask? Because when we surveyed the students, we found an interesting statistic. Students who have been the target of cyberviolence and cyberbullying articulated that the first person they turn to for help is not their parents, not their teachers, not their principal, but a friend. The other interesting statistic that came out of that is that oftentimes the friends weren't really sure what kind of help to provide. So the student said, it'd be really nice if you could tell us helpers how we can actively help our friends who come to us. So this infographic, if you will, is a 2-page document that helps principals help students help students. So we started off by assuring the students, one of the things that they found surprising is that, principals are a good resource. They're a good go-to, and especially if you have that critical relationship. So the first section is called, do you know that principals and vice principals know that students who have been bullied tend to reach out to their friends first? We know that now. Thank you for letting us know. And that a pile of other information here, you may, as the person, the go-to person, you may be the person who makes a difference in that other person's life. You may be the key one. And that principals, we know that students are hesitant to speak up for fear. And we're going to talk a little bit about those driving fears on the next document. But we do know that there is a fear factor. So when you come to us, we have that knowledge. And we're also here to help you as the helper. So we provided some other information for those who are in the helper mode and some statistics. Tim mentioned on the other infographic that statistics really drive things, that we're now looking at 65% of youth say they would tell a friend over a parent or guardian, and that you can trust your principal to help, or your vice principal, or a trusted friend or mentor or teacher. Some key things that when you're in that first moment of supporting a friend, show them that you're there for them. That's so critical. Assuring them that they've done the right thing is reaching out to you. And look at some ideas of things that you can do, such as ask them how they need help. or what they think they need to do, and not to seek revenge. And we talk a little bit about that again in the next infographic about what happens to those who reach out for revenge. Another aspect that the kids wanted us to share with the friends is, if you see something, say something, speak up, do something with it. Remember that remaining silent could be misinterpreted as approval. And those who are the victims of cyber violence and cyberbullying want to know that they have people that can help and speak up on their behalf if need be. And at the end here, the other part that the students wanted us to know about is, as a friend, you may be asked to tell the parents or help the parents deal with their child or their student's situation. So the acronym that Advice from Parents from Public Safety Canada of LOVE: parents, listen to your child, offer support and advocacy, validate your child's feeling. That validation was critical, especially with the teens in grade 9 and 10. And then explore resources together. So that's, again, another ready-to-go resource that you could absolutely share with your parent council. You could share with your student council president, with your student trustees. Back to the CPCO landing page, the next document that we want to share is listening to what students have to say. And this is the conglomeration. That listening piece is really, really important. So the student survey, one of the key pieces, anything that's in italics, is a direct quote from the students. And this first one here, sometimes it's the comments on the post that affect the targeted student more than the post itself. So they wanted us to let principals know that go beyond just what's posted. It's the follow-up comments that can actually be as damaging or more damaging. That bystander piece, not the person who posted, but those who commented. That was really important for us to hear. And then the number 1, 2, and 3 points that the students wanted to share. There is a fear factor when it comes to cyber violence and cyberbullying that is critical and different to other factors. There's a fear of the repercussion of being hurt or of being outed online. There's a fear of not being believed. That's a big one. This other one is judged. There's a fear of being judged. So when we're the receiver as a principal, when we're receiving information, being aware that the children or the students are extremely vulnerable in that moment of disclosure, the fear of not being judged is critical to them. So please watch your body language and how you handle that disclosure. And a fear of losing devices or access to device. And it'll be interesting as we watch other countries. I believe Australia just announced access to device being limited to under 16s. It'll be interesting to see how that plays out. But the fear of all ages saying they don't want to lose their device, how they hang on to that violent or bullying situation because they don't want to lose their device, that's an interesting point that we have to be aware of. Number 2, or the second most popular response, they don't want to be have their personal information disclosed other than what may have already happened in the bullying incident, or their family members to know. And the third point is that there is a sense of feeling of shame and humiliation, especially if they are the victim and depending on what's being posted. So we need to be aware of that from the student's voice. And the other parts, as I mentioned earlier, in quotation marks, the students' actual quotes. This one here, the first one, that not all cyberbullying is one-sided, and some students can lash out in response. But we also talked about, in a sports scenario, oftentimes it's the retaliation penalty that gets seen. So being aware of that. And this third quote I want to draw attention to, and this came up from the student to the principal's perspective. It's not always the people you think that's doing the bullying. So if we're open to listening to what the students have to say, I think that's a critical piece. So all of these resources can be found on the website. And we have one other one that we want to share with you, and that is an Excel spreadsheet. And it says, and CPCOs says Victim Services and Catholic School Boards. Now, yes, it does say in Catholic school boards, but rest assured there is a Victim Services Excel spreadsheet on the OPC website. And what we did in one of our first years in this initiative is recognize that, yes, Victim Services Toronto was a partner, but there's Victim Services across Ontario. So what we did as an initiative is we listed all of the school boards, and in this case, this is the Catholic School Board. So you'll see in column G, it's denoted Catholic. On the OPC website, your Excel spreadsheet says public, and also actually ADFO has a spreadsheet for the public and the Catholic school boards within their catchment. On column A is a listing of all of the Catholic school boards in alphabetical order. And then column B is the associated victim services that services that board. And of course, the phone numbers, the websites as you go across, the email and the mailing address for that. But what's interesting, if you look at column B and column A, for instance, in cell number 10, right in the middle here, you'll see Northeastern Catholic District School Board. There's 3 victim services because it's such a large board. So there may be a couple of victim services that service your board. So you would have to contact them to see exactly which one services your school within your board. So that was an exciting project. We just had this updated within the last year. And now that we're talking about victim services partners, I am going to turn this over to our partner on screen here, Jasminder. And Jasminder is our current victim services contact that works on our project, and she has some great resources to share with you. Jasminder, over to you.
Thank you so much for that wonderful introduction, Jen. I really appreciate it. And for sharing those resources as well. Really, in terms of the conversation that I want to have here for with all of you today is helping folks understand what victim services organizations can actually do for your school board and for you as leaders within your school boards. And then also understanding and just sharing some resources around the prevention and education work that we're doing for young people, because many of those resources are available across Canada, across Ontario, and you are able to use those. So I've actually sent the links to everything that I've included in this presentation in the chat already. So you are welcome to click through those as I go through this as well. And you will also be receiving this slide deck afterwards as well. So there will be QR codes in it and things along those lines that you will be able to hang on to. And so really, I'm the director at Victim Services of Community Engagement, EDI, and Policy. And part of that includes talking to young people, going out into schools and doing a lot of the prevention and education work around gender-based violence in particular, which is 70% of the 18,000 calls at Victim Services that we take on per year. And so this may be very hard to hear, but the reality is, and we see this in schools all the time, that we currently live within a rape culture. And that culture is a culture where sexual violence and abuse is being normalized and played down, where it's not called out enough, where it's accepted or laughed off. And we see this happening and, really manifesting within online violence against students, that cybersexual violence. We see this happening in terms of direct sexual violence. We see this happening in terms of human trafficking in our schools as well. And that's really just scratching the surface. And, just to kind of emphasize or really drive it home in terms of what we're seeing in the stark reality, this is not just a concept or an idea, right? We know that 1 in 10 Canadians are experiencing at least some form of sexual abuse before the age of 15 years old. And so the statistics that are included here, they are quite gender binary, but that's the way that the statistics were kind of undertaken. I am including them just to emphasize for us and help illustrate for us the reality of what young people are experiencing. And if 1 in 10 Canadians are being abused prior to the age of 15, a foundation of consent and understanding consent is being built for after the age of 15 as well. And after that point, about nearly 40% of women and 35% of men, are experiencing at least one form of physical or sexual assault, 15 and up. And so we know that the rates of these forms of violence are quite high. And that's why, I say that we live in a current culture and we want to move towards a consent culture. And that consent culture is a culture in which people respect each other's boundaries and make decisions about, what they want for their lives based on their inherent rights, right? So their inherent human rights to make decisions for themselves. and recognizing and respecting the rights of others. And so the major elements of consent culture are not only sexual in nature, they're also built on, we want consent to, seep into every single part of young people's lives, whether it's consent to go out to a movie or consent to hang out together or making decisions for themselves. And these ideas are things that we can cultivate within the school environment without even having to talk about sex. It's conversations around mutual respect, around open communication and individual autonomy that we want young people to be able to cultivate. And so here at Victim Services, we really have thought quite deeply about how we could cultivate consent culture. And so we've worked with, OPC and CPCO, as well as principals and vice principals within, the city of Toronto to really cultivate that consent culture. And so that has, there's been many wonderful learnings from that, which I want to share with all of you today. So these are some of the wonderful publicly available videos that we've made that are based on the issues that we're seeing when we go into schools and are talking to young people one-on-one. And so, this includes, so you can basically click on each of these videos and they are hyperlinked if you click on the image. And if you use this QR code or you click on the title, you will be able to go to our general YouTube channel. So it talks about, the pyramid of gender-based violence, intimate image sharing, sex trafficking, the process of sex trafficking, what that actually looks like, for people, especially when they're moving into an age range where they're no longer just in school. We know that young people are meeting up with people that they're meeting online, and young people are not necessarily considering people that they've met online as strangers. Somebody might be a stranger the first time maybe you're playing a game with them, but if you're making a decision to game together every single week, when you're talking to students, they're no longer thinking that this person is a stranger despite never having met them. And so this is really designed to equip young people with, tips for how do you do that safely? And then, a healthy masculinity, right? And building and creating that personal character development. And so these are some of those issues that we're really seeing in real life on the ground when we talk to young people, that they want tips and conversations around, and that they're finding that a lot of the times us as educators and the schools in general are kind of dancing around these issues. That's one of the things we've heard, and one of the feedback that we get is that, I wish my school talked about this. I wish the principals talked about this, because I think that this would really help my understanding. So I'm going to go ahead and share one of the videos with you all. This one is our In the Weeds Abuses Not Isolated video that was made in partnership with OPC and CPCO. So we're going to give that just a quick moment to load.
Sexual violence sprouts from the smallest seeds. Planting comments that normalize negative stereotypes allows for increasingly offensive behavior online. While behind screens, rape culture can grow like a weed. Suddenly, what started as flowery language has bloomed into something much more dangerous. It's not always clear when leaves turn into thorns. To you, a sexist comment or slur might be just a joke, but your laughter makes it easier for others to escalate to violence. That positive reinforcement is like giving water and sunlight to aggression. Pruning the comment section isn't enough to solve the problem. To kill a weed, you have to pull it out from the roots. Ultimately, sexual violence stems from biases embedded in our cultural soil. Like plants, we are all products of our environment. Anything that grows out of polluted dirt is going to have poison in its petals. We can't dig up the earth, but we can tend to our individual gardens. When you see offensive language or jokes online, remember, they can grow into real-world violence. It's easier to weed out sexist behavior when the roots are still small. The grass is always greener when you let positivity grow.
So this is a video, for example, which, you can utilize, you can make activities around it, supporting activities, And all these videos are available for you and other educators to be able to, really for you and other leaders to share with educators, pardon me, to be able to use within school environments. And so we definitely encourage you all to do that. And we come out with a new set of series every single year. And so this repository of videos is only going to continue to grow. I also want to highlight our mobile program for everybody, just in terms of a learning of something that could potentially be replicated within your school board. And so right now we are running a mobile program in which we are going into schools across the city of Toronto. It's a 4-week program. We're in the school for 2 hours per week. And this is specifically designed for students with IDD because it is not mandated learning for students with IDD to learn about consent. And so what we've actually seen, especially, when we go out to schools, is that these are the students that are experiencing the highest rates of sexual abuse, online violence, unhealthy relationships, and human trafficking. And so this is definitely something, a program that can be replicated within your own schools through school social workers or through the Safe Schools Department. And another, thing that we do, and this is designed for all students and all schools in the city of Toronto specifically, is we go in, we do presentations. And so we do small group workshops, large group presentations. And once again, this is a capacity building thing that you can either work with, other organizations that are within your region, or you can work through your own, Safe Schools Department or social workers to educate them so that they can go back into their schools and provide that education and learning. And so, we have definitely seen an improvement in terms of the knowledge that young people have around these issues. And we're hoping to see that, translate in terms of the actual levels of violence that young people are experiencing themselves. And so, it does have an impact and it does create a change. As I mentioned, this is currently available in the city of Toronto, but I do know other organizations. So for example, in Peel, Elizabeth Fry would be the organization doing this work. In Durham region, it would be Victim Services Durham that's doing this work. Out in Halton region, it would be Savis. And so there are organizations that are doing this work. And if you reach out to a victim services organization and ask them about preventative programming by using that sheet that Jen was mentioning, you will actually be able to, you can ask them and they'll be able to help provide that information as well and help kind of build up that partnership. So we're really just providing that as an example so that you are able to, create or recreate something similar. We do also have a magazine, a cyber violence focused magazine that has been created on our website, which includes key information, resources, games for young people around cyber violence. And so it's created by young people for young people. And you can actually print as many copies as you may need. I do just want to highlight that please confirm that all of the resources that we're sharing with you, whether it's videos, whether it's the zine, are age appropriate. And so I do want to encourage everybody to make sure that they take a look and comb through these resources in detail and determine what age range you feel that this would be appropriate for. It was high school students that designed this magazine. And so, it's of course your choice at what age you want to be able to use that for. We also do have the Angie app as well, which we've been encouraging, students when we go out to schools, as well as the victims that we're supporting, to download. The Angie app has, quite a number of features and is, able to be used by young people. There's, you can add a safe circle of people that could be living around you. That could be parents, family members, things along those lines, that they can track your location. You can turn that on and off. Children can route the safest way home for themselves based on crime data within the area. And this app is available across Canada. And so anybody can use it. There's an emergency mode where you can press and hold emergency mode. It can either call your, circle of care, or it can call emergency services, or both. And that is really just scratching the surface of some of the things that are available on the Angie app. So once again, if you determine this is age appropriate for certain groups of students, it is something that you can encourage young people to download if that would, help improve safety within your schools. I do also just want to touch on what victim services across Ontario are able to provide to schools and to school boards. Of course, I would say always, consult with your board policies and follow those first. So if there's ever anything where you need to report to CES, please go ahead and do so first. But victim services organizations across Ontario, what is consistent about them is the access to funding that they have for victims of crime. And so these are the eligible crime types that are relevant to children, and in particular relevant to what we're talking about. So non-consensual distribution of intimate images, human trafficking, criminal harassment, voyeurism, sexual assault, child abuse, right? Intimate partner violence, hate crimes. And so all of this falls within it. And, we can provide funding for short-term immediate counseling, crime scene cleanup, immediate emergency expenses, transportation to and from the hospital, for example, accommodation or meals, something like, and then transportation to that accommodation, and then, funeral expenses if somebody's a victim of a homicide as well. And so, figuring out which victim services is in your area, you'll be able to click those links that Jen has already actually went through. Jen and Tim have shared with you. I've just included the link to the OPC and the CPCO website specifically in order to find those victim services lists. And one more thing I just want to emphasize about the resources in your area. All victim services organizations provide intervention. So after a crime has occurred, not all of them have that same level of prevention programming and resources, which is why Victim Services Toronto specifically wants to share the resources that we have available with all of you so that you're able to use that across Ontario. But those intervention resources in terms of crime type and funding available is available to anybody regardless of region. So I hope that helps provide some context. I've also provided my email address in the chat if you would like some further information as well. And thank you both to OPC and CPCO for having me here today to share some further information with all of you.
Thank you, Jasmine. It's great information and really important. And thank you to those of you who have been in the background on the chat, asking questions, making comments, always appreciated. Last section of our webinar this morning, as we round off the hour, is to talk a little bit about one more document that I think as a leader in the school, you'll find really helpful. I'm going to share that document right now, and then we're going to actually look at it, and then a second document as well, and then we're looking for your help. So don't run off yet. We really need your feedback. So we'll wait for the sharing screen to come up. It is apparently on its way. Here we go. So there are two documents we're going to look at right now. One of them is what's called a leader's proactive approach. That's the screen you're looking at right now. And this is a proactive planning tool for you and your school to address issues of cyberbullying and cyber violence. And it's a thought matrix. It works from left to right. And I'm not going to go through all the boxes today. I'm cognizant of your time and thankful that you carved out some time for us today out of what I know is a busy day out there. But I will say that this is a great tool to work with your leadership team in your school, whether it's your chair people, whether it's your leadership team or your department heads, or it's that leadership team that you bring together for safe schools, or even a safe schools committee where you have parents and staff together. This tool, working from left to right, discusses the process of how to use it, first of all, in the top left corner, why it's important to consider this issue of cyberbullying, and some more stats here. And as Jen has, as always does, rightly pointed out, stats drive us. We also know that disproportionate amounts of cyberbullying occur for children of color. That is a problem in our society, something we need to address. We need to look at these stats, think about our school climate, our school community, and then build strategies. There are some resource links here as well. Back to the far left, some general guiding questions for you and your team. Excellent questions to start those juices flowing on what works for us and what are we going to do proactively in our school to be prepared. A policy list. And it can't be said enough. It's really important that you as a school leader in your school are familiar with your school's policy with respect to cyberbullying and bullying in general. That is tremendously important. So it is that time of year when we need to review what do we know and what do we need to re-know once more as the year settles into this, as we approach the halfway mark in January, February. So there are a list of PPMs here and different resources that are available, but your board's policy is also tremendously important as well. And a contact list here. I love this. This would be something I would have in my wall. You'll notice a lot of lines. We haven't filled it in for you. This is that go-to sheet when things go sideways. Who do I contact? So it's a little bit of homework for you to fill out this information here, but have it on hand so that when you need to, you can open your binder or look at your wall, open it up and say, these are the contacts I need to get in touch with because I have a cyberbullying or a cyber violence incident in my school. Some planning prompts for you, for students, for staff, and for parents, and then an awareness piece at the end. I'm pointing this out to you as a great document, but it is actually one of the documents we'll be updating this year. It needs updating. We're looking for your feedback on this document. So we're going to ask for your help at the end of this workshop to review it and send us some feedback so that we can have a more up-to-date and more responsive document web page. It may change in format. It's a placemat. Maybe the placemat model needs to change. So we're looking for your feedback. This, though, is just the proactive approach. We're going to take a second now, and Jan's going to look at the reactive approach.
Okay, thanks, Tim. So we're going to put up the reactive placemat next, and you'll see that it's in a purple color. Again, a thought matrix for principals. We called it reactive, and we may look, it says /responsive approach. So we may even look at renaming this tool, whatever it is. Right now, as mentioned, it is a thought matrix. So starting in the left-hand corner, basically describing what the purpose of the tool is. Some general guiding questions. So you've had an incident that's happened, some things to help you in the moment. Think about what are some things you need to consider. What has actually happened? Is there a criminal element to it? Has there been a law that's been broken? Now, both of these resources, I saw a question in the chat pod, they are available on our respective websites, both the proactive and reactive. And you will be receiving, there's some links to in the chat pod right now, so you can click on those links as well. Underneath the guiding questions, we've taken an approach that it's a principle 911 kind of, you've got to do something right in the moment. What's your immediate response? What is your short-term response? And what is your long-term response? Immediate, obviously, you're thinking of safety. Is there a child in need of immediate safety? Is there, if it's a crime, do we need to involve police? So that immediate response can take right in the exact moment. And one of the things, especially in the cyber world, there's a question in there that says, what is the potential for escalation? And we want to try and be as responsive as possible to reduce the amount of escalation. From the immediate response goes to some things to be considering in the short term. Who needs to be notified? What's the documentation, the paperwork, after you've satisfied those safety pieces? And then in the long term, what does your student, staff, parent, population need to know? What do you need to do? And maybe you roll back into that proactive placemat. In the middle, we provided some definitions, especially of ages, of what's the difference between a child, youth, and an adult. And looking at those definitions coming together so that when we're talking about cyberbullying or child pornography or child sexual harassment, that we're all on the same page. This is what we understand it to be in the moment. Interestingly enough, when the first placemat was created, those definitions of luring and online grooming weren't on the first placemat. And in fact, when we first did a focus group with principals, many of them said, well, what's sextortion? What is sexting? And now it's become, over the last 7 or 8 years, has become well understood and well known. The last section of this placemat is best practices. And these are to keep you as an administrator in your school and someone who may be in a position of investigating a cyber violent or cyberbullying incident to keep you safe as well. So practices for you. And you'll see there's some not recommended notions there. And that something really, really important, especially if a student or a parent or teacher or somebody comes to you with an image that is a borderline or is child pornography, what you have to understand about repercussions. of viewing and or possessing child pornography. So it's your responsibility also to know all of your board policies. Start with the Education Act all the way down to your board policies, practices, and procedures. So we're going to transition now to what Tim said is your help. We're going to have Kim Stadnick come on and share with us. Kim has been on our project for a number of years now, and she is the vice principal at Melbourne Collegiate Institute, and she has had the fortune of, or unfortunate, of using proactive, but unfortunately using the reactive placemat tool. And we are going to be asking Kim for her thoughts if she were to be able to update this. We recognize it's very text dense, and we recognize it's a placemat. It might have to convert to a digital or shared tool, but what Kim's thoughts are on her use and then her improvements. So Kim, I'm going to turn it over to you and let us know what you think as somebody in the field using this now. Welcome, Kim.
Thank you. Thanks, Jan, and thank you, everyone. So as Jan said, I've had the unfortunate experience in multiple schools of managing many layers of this. And I think right now our biggest challenge as educators and actually as parents is managing AI. And the most kind of recent piece, and exactly as Jan said, luring wasn't there in the beginning, and as technology evolves, we're going to have to look at this a little more. And I think of us working in partnership. So I want to say first off that my placemat, as Tim said, it sits on his wall. Mine sits on my desk, even though I've had these experiences. It is an excellent guide to what should I do in the moment, what should I do in the next few moments, and just the wealth of information sits there. So please take it off each respective website and post it on your wall or post it. Every time I meet with a new vice principal or if I'm mentoring, I provide this as a resource. It's just not something that we initially think is there for us. So I want to go back to the point of AI. It's becoming a little unwieldy, and really kind of the most, I think, important and new things are really delineating between what makes an AI post, someone's head, other person's body, kind of deal with a criminal aspect, and that's really up to the police. But nonetheless, it's about the partnerships. I think what's missing is really the restorative practices, and I would say even over the past 5 years is that I've really dug deeper into my restorative practices, and it doesn't come naturally to everyone, and people don't know that there are official guidelines on prompts, and so I think that's a big piece. Our trauma-informed practice as administrators has become greater in our response to dealing with more and more often inappropriate comments made on posts that then can become sexualized or hate or race. A lot of bias sits in them. And I agree, Jan, and I can't remember, I think it was Jan that made mention, is that it's not just the post, it's the stigma of what follows and what people. And so I think really it's also our lens to how do we respond to the stigma, because layered into it, it's not only the child or the student stigma, it's the family stigma of, oh, my child did this and how am I going to recover from this? I would say that some of our new mental wellness or healthy responses are there. I'm thinking of new pieces for our grade 10 curriculum. I know there's some other elementary curriculum that is really, I think, mental health and safe and caring just connect. And then I wanted just to share a few things that we've been doing as a result of. So Tim talked about sharing this with your department heads and other key leads. I give this to all the guidance staff. I give this to our EAs, our SNAs, the students that have different relationships. And so I think that's really important that it's guided by administrators, but who else can use this document well? But one really interesting thing, we presented this to our Safe and Caring Committee last year, and they came up with the idea of putting QR codes in bathrooms for our students of where they can get some help. So they're sitting in the stall, they've come across a video, at least there's a little QR code for them to respond. And it takes it back to, as Jasminder was saying, like it takes it back to the links from victim services. We've really worked on building our network of resources. I could go on because I have a lot more ideas, but I'm going to leave it there. But I'm more than willing to have anyone ask questions or sprout some ideas.
Okay, thank you, Kim. I was writing down as you were talking as well. So absolutely, I agree with your feedback on some next steps. So on our next slide here, we're going to bring up a QR code. And for those of you, if this is of interest to you, it's of interest to us. We'd like to hear from you. So you see a QR code that it will take you to a survey just on the proactive and reactive placemat tools. What did you like? What didn't you like? What are your thoughts? And are you interested in being perhaps part of a small focus group or coming together and just discussing some of the issues that Kim mentioned and how we can better serve the next generation of principals and vice principals dealing with this? What kinds of ways can we create these tools to be more responsive? And I like the idea of the restorative practices and the trauma-informed and the mental well-being. So if you're a participant right now on this webinar and you'd like to be involved, at the end of this survey, there's an opportunity for you to leave your name and your contact information. We will be gathering sometime between now and March. And what that looks like, we're not quite sure, but if you were interested, we'd love to have you. If you've enjoyed today, we have 3 other sessions, and some of these sessions actually speak to some of what Kim was talking about. On January 23rd, who do leaders talk to and who can leaders, or what can leaders do? That's focusing on the mental well-being. So we have Durham District School Board, and we're looking at some of the leading mentally healthy schools Ontario resources on supporting principals and vice principals dealing with cyberviolence and cyberbullying, but the mentally healthy ways of doing so and supporting mental health in doing so. March 18th, what's new for leaders in the evolving digital landscape? And that's an exciting moment. We have Jeanette Hughes, who's a professor and Canada Research Chair for Technology and Pedagogy in the Faculty of Education at Ontario Tech University. And she's going to be sharing with us critical digital literacies, new literacies, conceptualizations of learning, and digital citizenry. And just so that you know, she is the recipient of the Ontario Ministry of Research and Innovation Early Research Award and the Ontario Research Fund Research Excellence Award. So she's going to be coming and sharing an interactive tool on March 18th that may help us doing some deciphering as to whether an app or a website is a safe one or not. And then May 1st, how do leaders plan? We're going to be taking a look at everything we've just been talking about over the first 3 and look at 2 different school boards and their safe schools departments on how they deal with and respond to incidents of cyberviolence and cyberbullying and share what they have been doing. So we hope that you can join us for all 3 of them. We do thank you for being here today. And please, if you can, share your thoughts and feedback using that QR code. All of this will be available for you. As we said, we are recording it, and all of the links will be available for all the videos that were shared and the access points and the resources. And finally, if you need to contact us, our information is on our next slide there for OPC, CPCO, and victim services, and we're happy to answer any questions you may have. The chat pod will remain open for a minute or 2 after the webinar. I know we're 2 minutes over, but what great conversations we've had. Thank you for joining us. Have a safe rest of the school year till 2025, and we do look forward to seeing you in our other webinars. Thanks so kindly, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks, everyone. Have a fantastic rest of the day.